just joined by a few more guests, and in next 5 minutes we'll be starting with the workshop. Thank you so much. Good morning, one and all. Welcome to the day 2 of the 6th National Preparatory Workshop for WRC-23. So after the successful day 1 with highly interactive, informative presentation, we are all set with the same enthusiasm for the day 2. On the stage, I would like to invite our guest, Ma'am Srimati Gunjan Dave, our Chief Guest for the morning, Member Technology DOT. Ma'am, please may I have you on stage. Our guest of honor, Shri R.R. Mittal, Senior DDG Tech. Shri Jitendra Singh, Senior Director, Government Affairs, India and South Asia, Qualcomm. Mr. Faradul Parvez, Program Officer, APT. Shri Tia Dua, Chairman, IAFI. And Mr. Bharat Bhatia, President, IAFI. May I please have our guest on stage. And I would like to request Mr. Bhatia to kindly welcome our guest with floral bouquet. Ma'am Gunjan Dave, thank you so much for coming and gracing the occasion with your presence. Our guest of honor, Shri R.R. Mittal. Thank you so much, Mittal ji, for coming. Shri Jitendra Singh, Senior Director, Government Affairs, Qualcomm. Mr. Faradul Parvez, Program Officer, APT. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and gracing the occasion. With experience of more than 35 years in the telecom sector, which include all facets of telecom, be it product development, business development, telecom licensing, regulatory issue with respect to interconnection, roaming, unified licensing, and infrastructure sharing, mobile number portability, spectrum management, spectrum-related issues like spectrum prices, efficient utilization and spectrum reframing, finalization of joint ventures. Mr. Tia Dua has so many feathers in his hat. I would like to request Mr. Dua to please kindly come here and give the welcome address.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and very warm welcome to our chief guest, Madam Gunjan Dave, Mr. Mittar, Parvez, Jitinder, and my other industry colleagues. Also, very warm welcome to all dignitaries who have come from abroad. It's quite evident when you see the audience, despite all the challenges that today and yesterday we faced while reaching the destination, I think is creditable, which is only evident the kind of interest and kind of the requirement that we workshop this has. Once again, very warm welcome to each one of you. I'll try and avoid not to repeat what must have been yesterday said, but there may be a little bit of repetition here and there. I'll just I'm honored to speak to you today at this very important inaugural session. Very warm welcome, Madam Gunjan Dave, Member Technology. At the outset, I would like to thank ITU-APT for inviting each one of you and also me to be available at this site. As you all know, a little bit of background about the ITU-APT. I think now it is over 20 years old, and this was again made by some of us, including Mr. Bharat Bhatia and self, at TCIL Bhavan long back, around 20 years back. It's a non-profit, non-political society with the prime objective of actively getting involved into the telecom sector in the activities of the International Union and APT. There are many first to its credit, being in existing for over 20 years. Over the years, ITU-APT Foundation has been recognized as a regional organization by the ITU, creditable to our president who has been spearheading this institution on this. One of the best achievements that we had very recently to become a member of the ITU-R. Now coming back to this session is today's 6th preparatory workshop for WRC 2023. It's an important event, and it is the last of the event before we go for the WRC 2023 and APG. For us, it is an occasion, an opportunity to exchange ideas and understand the key issues that would be considered by the WRC 23. As you all know, WRC is held every 3 to 4 years, with the objective is to review and update the radio regulation and some of the treaty that governs the use of the radio frequency. It also provides an opportunity for countries to negotiate and agree on the allocation of the frequency band for different services, and to set the technical and regulatory conditions. How do we use that spectrum itself? World Radio Conference helps in addressing emerging issues, emerging technologies, such as the increased demand for the spectrum for new and existing services, and the need to promote the deployment of the telecommunication services in rural and remote area. Further, decisions made at the WRC, they have a significant impact on the development and deployment of the wireless technologies, such as mobile communication, satellite communication, wireless broadband services. It's an important event for every government, international organization, including the private sector, which helps to ensure the efficient and effective use of radio frequency spectrum for the benefit of all the nations. The workshop will focus on an overview of the WRC-23 preparatory activities, terrestrial issues, and including the WRC-27 agenda, which is, I think, agenda number 10. The lower frequency bands up to, say, 6 gigahertz are currently, as you are aware, used by 4G, by 5G, and will remain important in the 6G era, especially to provide wide area coverage for services. Since very little new sub-6 GHz spectrum is expected to be made available in the near future, the millimeter wave band in the 24 to 52 gigahertz is another issue which needs to be discussed. The conference also addresses issues related to the development and operation of the international telecommunication service. And this conference also serves as a platform for member states to negotiate and reach agreement on the use of this. Also, I would like to mention here the 6th meeting of the APT Conference Preparatory Group, which is APG, is now being held in Brisbane, Australia from 14th to 19th of August 23. And I think it's very important that we all put in everything, all the recommendations, and what we need to do is, because the last date for contribution submission is 7th of August. I also like to welcome our good old friend Fardul. He's also, I think, made it happen here to come here. Very warm welcome. APT has also invited the contribution for APG 6 meeting from administration on various WRC-23 agenda and issues related to Radio Assembly 23. The agenda of the 6th National Preparatory Workshop has broadly, I think, it was great to listen to the broadcast services yesterday. I think this was the first time probably I had all those who could not make because of the traffic condition, all those who could not be present here, they were kept engaged by putting it in a broadcast mode in the YouTube. I believe going forward, the last day, yesterday, the session was very, very engaging and was very relevant. I believe today this session will provide a valuable opportunity which will work together for successful of WRC conference. Thank you so much and good to see you.
Thank you, sir, for your words. Moving ahead, for the status of APT preparatory activities for WRC-23, I would like to call upon Mr. Faradul Parvez, the Program Officer, APT, to kindly come address. It's indeed an honor to have you again here on the day 2. Thank you.
Yesterday's one same. Good morning to you all. First of all, again, thanks to ITU-APT Foundation of India for inviting APT, as well as inviting for organizing this workshop. Actually, this is the first time that I am attending Indian National Preparatory Workshop on WRC. So it is actually very much I'm surprised to see like a lot of interest, a lot of discussion. Yesterday we had many fruitful discussion on satellite-related agenda items, and today I think there will be more interactive discussion on terrestrial and mobile-related agenda item discussion. And also last evening there was a industry regulator roundtable dialogue, so that was also quite interesting, where delegates exchanged their opinion on certain issues related to the satellite communication. So I will continue my presentation from yesterday. I'll just wait for the slides to be uploaded. Yep. So basically, yesterday we introduced the organization APT. So these slides already we have discussed yesterday. Today, basically, I'm going to focus on our preparatory activities situation. So I think you have seen this figure yesterday in my presentation and Mr. Bhatia's presentation. I think yesterday Mr. Jitendra shows this one. If you want to understand the process of WRC, you need to keep this figure in mind. Actually, this is very much important because our WRC preparation doesn't come suddenly. It starts from the previous WRC cycle. So the previous WRC adopt the agenda for the next WRC, and then those agenda items are allocated to the different study groups of the ITU-R for study, and then the regional group started their preparation. And the study groups basically conduct the studies, and then they complete the studies and then submit to the CPM second session. And then CPM finalize the CPM report. And after that, basically, the regional organizations and the administration, and they thoroughly see go through the CPM report and then propose their contribution to the WRC. And as I was mentioning yesterday, that WRC is an administrative conference, and contribution are limited only for the administration as well as 6 regional organizations, including APT. So very much important that setting agenda for next WRC is very much important, and that is set under agenda item number 10. So basically, if you look back to the history of APG, it was established in 1996 with the objective of harmonizing the views and developing common proposals from the Asia-Pacific region. I am pleased to say that India was one of the founding members who was involved in the creation of APG. And yesterday, I think some of you seen Mr. Anand Agarwal. He was there. So he was the founding chairman of APG, and then he continued until 2007 as the chair of APG. The first ever APG meeting was held in April 1997 in Bangkok, and then followed by the second meeting in Seoul. So basically, we started our administration started the process even before the resolution 72 adopted in ITU. So we were in a good pace at that time before ITU. So basically, our main objective is to take preparation for WRC activities. But not only WRC, we also cover RA activities and some other issues related to the plenipotentiary conference. If there are some issues that need to be referred from WRC or the radio sector to the plenipotentiary, then APG look at that aspect as well. So this slide basically showing you the terms of reference of APG on different aspects, WRC activities, RA activities, and other activities. RA means Radio Communication Assembly. As you know, the WRC is for basically for changing the radio regulation or revising the radio regulation. RA basically controls the activities of the study group of ITU-R. So if we look to the APG structure, since you want to understand that regional preparatory process, you need to understand the structure. So basically, in case of a structure, we do have 3 layers of a structure. We have plenary, then we have working parties, and then we have drafting groups. So working parties are similar to the chapters of the CPM, such as Working Party 1, Working Party 2, until Working Party N. And then for each of the agenda item, we do establish the drafting groups. And the activities are supported by the APT Secretariat. And we do have a steering committee, as well as you know, that the outcomes as a treaty will be part of the treaty document. So we do have editorial committee to check the language and other editorial issue in the documents. So basically, in terms of the structure, we do have a chair, and then we have 2 vice chairs, and then editorial committee has a chair, and the working party will have chairs, and drafting group will have chairs as well. So if you look at our current structure, you can see here the list of our current management team of the APG. Dr. Kyujin Wei from Republic of Korea. We do have Vice Chair Ms. Zucker from China and Mr. Abe from Japan. We have editorial Chair of Editorial Committee, Mr. Hos from Australia, and we have a Special Senior Advisor, Mr. Araste from Islamic Republic of Iran. In terms of the working party structure, as you can see, currently we have 5 working parties similar to the CPM chapter. First working party considering the issues related to the fixed mobile and broadcasting. Working Party 2, Aeronautical and Maritime. Working Party 3, Science. Working Party 4, Satellite. And Working Party 5, the general issues, including agenda item number 10. And then Working Party 1, as you can see, we have co-chairs from Japan and Korea. Working Party 2, we have from Vietnam. Working Party 3 from Indonesia. Working Party 4 from China and India. And then the Working Party 5 from Iran. And then if you want to see the list of the DG chairs, you can find this from the link I provided in the slide. You can click and you can download the link. And this basically, as I was saying yesterday, basically we don't just randomly pick up date, but we consider many things for scheduling the APG meeting, and it was, these dates were actually chosen at the beginning of the cycle. So we started our preparation in 2020, and now we are at the final stage. As you can see that we already had our 5 meetings, and the final meetings to be held in Brisbane, Australia. So the basic objective of that meeting is to develop preliminary APT common proposal from this region, and then also take some necessary steps for the coordination activities during WRC. So first of all, you need to understand that the process, we are talking about the APT common proposal, but how to develop the APT common proposal. So maybe just in short, I can explain to you that normally we organize 5 or 6 preparatory meetings in a cycle, each either 8 months to 12 months apart. And then the final meeting we normally organize about 3 months before the conference, considering the deadline and the voting procedure. So at the final meeting, we normally adopt the preliminary APT common proposals, and so normally 2-stage process are followed for developing APT common proposal, and it's very much important to understand for the administration. First of all, we adopt the PSCP during the APG meeting, as I was saying. So normally we do on the consensus basis, but there are some way also, if consensus is not reached, then we apply the simple majority rule to adopt a proposal as a PSCP in the meeting itself. After the meeting, those proposals are circulated to the administration. The 38 administration normally vote for each proposal, and we collect those votes. So if a proposal is supported by at least 25 members, 25% means like 10 members. So it has to be a proposal. PSCP need to be supported by at least 10 administration. Then it can become SCP. The second condition is telling that, and not opposed by more than 50% of the number who supports it. Suppose 10 members are supporting it, but 6 members are opposing it, then it cannot be a SCP. So the mechanism is quite inherently rigid. So you can trust on the proposals. Once it is becoming SCP, you can trust those proposals very much. So because of the inherent mechanism, first of all, it has to be approved by the meeting itself. Then it goes to the members, each members, for confidential voting. And then after a vote, we count the vote. And if it is supported by at least 10, and then not opposed by the 50% of who supported it, correct? So that is the process we follow for the approving an SCP. And now the question comes to the participation of activities of APG. As you know, that all APT members are entitled to participate at activities of APT. You can do so, so no issue at all. But considering the fact that WRC is administrative conference, so in case of APG meeting as well, the affiliate member does not have any right to submit any contribution unless your administration supports it. Administration has their right to submit any proposal to the APG meeting, but affiliate members cannot submit any proposal to the APG meeting unless it is endorsed or supported by the corresponding administration. Suppose if ITU-APT Foundation of India wants to send a proposal to APG meeting, it needs to be agreed by the Indian administration first. And then if I receive a document or we receive a document, I will ask that endorsement from the Indian government. Correct? So that's the process actually. As a membership, you can participate. You can directly go to our website, register for the event. So fully okay. But in terms of the contribution submission, there is some restriction for this APG meeting. So that's I was mentioning about that. And then please remember the deadline. I think Mr. Dua already mentioned about the deadline. Our deadline is 7th of August. So any document after that deadline will not be accepted as input document. That will be considered as information document only. So be mindful about the deadline. That is challenging. Every time I need to push the administration, please follow the deadline. I know some places it takes some time to approve, but sometimes like my hand are closed as well. So we need to give the equal treatment to all. So please be mindful about this deadline of 7 days. And for WRC, as you know, this is 4 weeks. And when you go to the meeting, or if you attend virtually, you can see different kind of documents. So I just listed out here some of the documents. I think time is almost finished. So I just explain to you. We have administrative document where you can see the agenda and other things. We have input documents. Input document is the contribution from the administration. Information documents are the information document from different kind, from administration, from affiliate members, from international organizations. Then we have temporary documents. Temporary documents are actually the discussion documents. When the meeting is going on, they develop some kind of discussion document during the process. So that is temporary documents. And then we have the final outcomes at the output documents. So whenever you, after the meeting is finished, if you want to find some outcomes, then you always need to look at the out documents, correct? Not on the temporary documents. So be mindful about that. This is a bit different from the ITU, because in case of ITU, you need to go back to the input document contribution to find out the outcomes. But for our case, we do have separate out documents, so where you can find all the out documents. And our most of the documents and resources are available at APT website. If you go there to the APT website, you can see our current status of the preparation, all agenda items. Agenda item wise, you can find out what was the discussion at the last meeting and what's supposed to be discussed in the next meeting. So everything is listed on the website. If you go there, you can find out in details. So that is very much important, because suddenly you cannot propose anything which is not discussed previously. So normally in case, actually as administration you have your right, but normally it is always preferred that you see the result of the ITU studies, you see the outcomes of the previous APG meeting, and then submit your proposal accordingly. And we do have the input template. We have definitive input template for submitting documents. Those are available in the website, so you can download those template and prepare your documents accordingly. So basically our whole objective is to work on the consensus basis. Actually this is, it's not so easy to build a consensus when our region is so vast, starting from Iran on the west side, and then if you go to the east side, it's Cook Island. So it's quite vast region and divergence of views. But I think starting from the Mr. Agarwal's time, everybody like to work on the consensus basis. Whatever we do on consensus basis. So there is a very good saying in APG and in WRC that everyone, after the meeting, everyone is equally unhappy. You understand the point, correct? Everyone is equally unhappy. Equally unhappy. Okay. So that's the vision of the art sector. Everyone is equally unhappy after when the outcomes come out. So be mindful about that one. So that's my information to you about the APT as well as APG, and I'm here until the end of the day. So if you need any question, if you need any clarification, questions about the process of APG, please feel free to do that. And thanks again to ITU-APT Foundation of India for inviting APT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pervez, for sharing the status of the APT preparatory activities for WRC-23. Moving ahead, for the introduction to WRC-23 preparatory activities, I would like to call upon here Shri Jitendra Singh, Senior Director, Government Affairs, India and South Asia, Qualcomm. Mr. Singh, please.
Distinguished guests on the dais, participants here, and participants who are online. I think this is a discussion where we are seeing some new items, which for some of us it is something new which we saw here. But that is how WRC cycle actually works. So WRC cycle, as was discussed yesterday and as was expressed by Mr. Pervez, is a 4-year cycle, and we saw the kind of complexity in that 4-year cycle which was shown here. That also includes the complexity of APG. So if we are not following that work which is happening in these activities of WRC or APG or related activities which are happening in various study groups, then we are missing few important things which are required for our country. So if we go with some views to any of these meetings, we may not find everyone agreeing to our views. And that is why we have these meetings. That's why we have agenda items. If everyone is agreeing, if there is a consensus that we don't need any agenda item, then we can do things the way we want. But because there is not generally an agreement, that's why the issues become agenda items. And that's what then goes for a cycle of 4 years study, either technical studies or regulatory discussions or regulatory studies. I'll take example of the current WRC cycle, where we have various agenda items, where people initially might have thought that, yes, this is a simple agenda item, we can resolve this in much before the actual WRC. So we will have a consensus on those issues. Today we have landed up on a document known as CPM, outcome of CPM 2, which is 1100 page document with multiple methods, multiple views, multiple alternatives for each agenda item. So that is the kind of complexity. So there is when you have all these views, all these options, that means you don't have an agreement, and that is what is then going to go into the conference, where you want to have a consensus on those issues. So if we are not able to drive a particular view, then we are going down by at least 4 years, because that is the cycle of WRC. So if there is a view or a issue or a point which as country we want to take it to WRC, and if it does not get through in this WRC, it is not necessary that it will also get through in the next WRC. So it means 4 years to 8 years are gone. So we have to be, and then that means there are subsequential and consequential impact on other items which probably government has planned for based on those initial thoughts which we wanted to take to WRC. We have seen yesterday some excellent presentations, excellent discussions happening on various agenda items, and we will see that happening again today. There are various stakeholders, including various government departments, including various government agencies, including various industrial interests, both from terrestrial, satellite, and other satellite and other bodies who have interest in these spectrum bands. But my view is that we should be focusing on what is required for India. So that should be our interest here, and that is, I think, what is IFI's normally drive is. So if we miss something today, then at least 4 to 8 years are gone. So how do we know that what is required for telecom in India? This is a document which is Bharat 6G vision, which was released very recently, and I hope all of you would have seen this, that what is there in this document, what is the requirement, and what we are planning for 6G. And one of the items here is that 6G, India will take leadership in development of 6G, India will take leadership in deployment of 6G. And the timeline probably, which I remember correctly, which was announced by Honorable Prime Minister in one of those events when ITU office was being inaugurated that day, that we will have 6G launched in India by 2027, 2028. If we want to do that, then it means it is important for us to drive this particular agenda in this current the WRC cycle, which is going to start now, which is WRC-27. And I presented some important requirements of Indian 6G task force outcomes yesterday in my presentation. And I think that as India, we should be focusing and pushing for those items of spectrum requirements of 6G, which will ensure that Bharat 6G vision is successful in the right time frame which has been planned. So I think I hope that we'll keep that in as a top priority, both in administration and otherwise as industries. We would like to we'd like to ensure that whatever our government has come out as a vision document, we make it successful, because we are the one who participate in WRCs. Not everyone who is working on this vision document is participating. So we understand the complexities. People who are participating, who have participated, the government agencies who have been working on this, they should be supportive of in ensuring that this 6G vision is actually achieved in the right time frame, and that is what we should be aiming in the forthcoming WRC cycle. So this is my view. With this, I would like to thank all of you, and I hope Delhi remains safer, much safer, and we, especially after floods, what we saw, at least I saw yesterday, the situation, hopefully some of us who are staying in different remote parts of the NCR region are safe. Thank you.
Absolutely. We pray for everybody's safety here in Delhi and NCR region. Moving ahead on that note, thank you so much, Mr. Singh. Shri Ritu Ranjan Mittal is presently working as a head of Telecom Engineering Center, TEC. He is an ITS officer of 1985 batch, having vast experience of more than 30 years of services in various capacities in the Department of Telecommunication, Government of India. He is having vast experience in the area of standardization of telecom equipment and network, including next generation network, spectrum management, radio regulations. I would like to request our guest of honor, Mr. Mittal, to kindly present his address. Thank you, sir.
So, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Madam Gunjan Dave, Member Technology, DCC, experts on the dais, experts of the dais, colleagues who have joined online. It's a great pleasure to be here and sharing few thoughts in this very important preparatory meeting for the WRC, which is scheduled for October-November this year. WRC, we know that its most important role is identification of new spectrum bands. Also, how the process is done, it has been explained, it has done through a very, very consensus-based approach, which we also can say, which is not only visible at the global level, but it is also important at the regional level. That's what we call regional and global harmonization. With these very important functions, we are today witnessing the success of earlier WRC in terms of technology. 5G proliferation, of course, we started late, but we have now caught up. All those spectrum bands we know are decided in this. Similarly, LEO-MEO constellation, these are coming. These are all decisions taken in earlier WRCs. So any technology success will have some key ingredients. One is a good R&D effort. A good R&D effort. Second is there should be a demand. And then the third important thing is the harmonization or the consensus on various spectrum bands across the globe, across the region. So that is why this WRC is important. Mr. Chaitendra very well explained that if we miss the bus in WRC-23 for any of the proposals, then the next opportunity of WRCs, it's a 4-year process. So we have to be, consensus is very important, let us know how this consensus is achieved. So there, let's say if consensus is 1 C, I would like to introduce 2 other C's before the consensus approach. The first C I would like to say is consultation. Consultation amongst the stakeholders. It is very important. And then is the collaboration. Sometimes you need to collaborate in order to achieve a larger goal which the country have. And this is the most 3 important C's when we go to the WRC. But prior to that, let me also tell that there is a system of, Mr. Parvez beautifully explained the study groups. So there is a national study group wherein we collaborate and discuss and make proposals. So those activities are also, kind of precursor to all these international meetings and should be given the kind of attention they deserve. I request everybody to contribute there, to attend there. The other day, last week, we had a conference on standardization. It was one of the industrial leaders very clearly explained the 4 steps So one is that you are just an observer in a standardization process. Then the second is that you are a follower. First a follower, then you are an observer, follower, then you are a contributor, and then the last is you are a leader. So we have to aspire to be a leader in that. Now, DOT is committed to the $1 trillion digital economy vision that we have. So Mr. Jitendra mentioned the Bharat 6G vision document, what it has, and where do we see in the 6G space as a country. So other initiatives which DOT has taken is a telecom technology development fund. Now, why I'm mentioning is that while we develop products, we also, in the radio sector, we have an importance of coexistence studies. Maybe that also deserves the attention. How do we do coexistence studies, so that the proposals that we make are really affecting, and it is for the betterment of India. Coming to TEC, which I head, TEC is basically involved in corresponding to the T sector. We have all the study groups, national working groups for the telecom sector. For the radio sector, we chair NSG 5, which is related to terrestrial. So I can tell there is a very harmonious atmosphere when we discuss the proposal in NSG 5. There are good contributions from the industry, good contributions from the academia. We discuss it threadbare and arrive at a common agreed text. So those are then presented to the WP5D. Recently we were, there was a WP5D 44th meeting, which agreed to the Indian vision of the ubiquitous connectivity as one of the usage scenario. So earlier the proposal for the usage scenarios, apart from the 3 which were there in 5G, there were 5 usage scenarios, the other 2 extra being the integrated compute and communication, and integrated communication and sensing. Of course, in the final the compute word I think was changed to artificial intelligence. But because of the harmonious efforts of all the stakeholders, we could achieve what we wanted through the Bharat 6G vision, ubiquitous connectivity. Because 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, still there are uncovered areas. So India had laid a special emphasis on ubiquitous connectivity, so that going forward, whatever documents, be it in the R sector or be it in the further in 3GPP, they are made, they take care of this very important usage scenario. So this is what kind of a preparatory work or the harmonious preparatory work it plays. Of course, we all know that going forward we will have very clear task in, I mentioned coexistence studies, and very importantly identification of a candidate 6G technology. So I request all the stakeholders to come together and work together so that we can Honorable Minister that day while launching Bharat 6G Alliance, he gave a call of at least 10% Indian patents in 6G. So that would be possible only if we work together, and we work together from right now, because it is our aim that though we have 4G and 5G stacks in India, but we also want to have 6G, and we don't want to be, in fact, India has a vision of leading 6G. So with that, I think it's time, and I would, we work together as we are doing, but we increase our efforts, and I would like to congratulate the efforts of Bhatia ji and his team through the ITU-APT Foundation, because as a sector member, they are a very important stakeholder, and we look forward to the contributions from ITU-APT. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitter, for your encouraging words. Moving ahead, with an extensive background in IT, Ms. Gunjan Dave successfully implemented numerous IT-enabled systems such as customer relationship management and billing for mobile, network management system for exchanges, and fraud management system. She also played a key role in software development for in-house usage, as well as creation of customer-friendly application. Notably, she was involved in significant projects, including the Mumbai Wi-Fi, IT security audits, including SOX audits, and the management of MTNL data center. So I request Ma'am Gunjan to kindly address the gathering. Ma'am.
To all the esteemed guests on the dais, all the experts available here, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning, namaste, and warm welcome. I think I am a bit late. Already lot of discussions have already taken place yesterday, and yesterday I got a glimpse, and I felt some very important discussions have taken place in this field. Now, WRC is a mega event which is going to commence in November, and it is really going to be a very important event where a lot of spectrum related policies and regulations are going to be finalized. And it is expected to look at crucial spectrum issues in a manner by covering all spectrum related matters. So last WRC in 2019 also was a milestone in opening new spectrum bands for 5G. Government of India is committed to promoting a robust, scalable and intelligent 5G infrastructure capable of handling massive traffic growth. And WRC-23 will be a challenging and demanding conference, as there will be not only focus for additional spectrum for 5G, but also for 6G. Along with 5G, world has also started working on the next generation mobile technology, that is 6G. And the focus is expected to be on tackling societal changes such as sustainable economic growth, pandemics and climate change. India is actively participating in global 6G developments, and this has already been shown by the way of launch of 6G vision document, and now of course a launch of 6G alliance also last week. 6G work in India will be a key in boosting the faster adoption of new technology, and we plan to identify priority areas for research by involving stakeholders including industry, academia and service providers, spanning theoretical and spanning simulation studies, proof of concept prototypes and demonstration and early market interventions through startups as per the vision document. With growing complexity of new technologies, new approaches of spectrum management have also become critical. With the proliferation of these new technologies and growing importance of spectrum in our societies, global regulations, recommendations provide the necessary vision and guidance for our national spectrum management policies and regulations. WRC will also deliberate on proposed studies in 6G, and these studies are very important to India as we search for new midterm bands, and my team in DOT is actively working towards it with all the stakeholders to narrow down the possible bands of interest for IMT studies. Spectrum management policies and regulations require in-depth discussion between stakeholders, innovators to come to a common understanding. And this common understanding has been very beautifully explained by my earlier speakers also. ITU and APT provide a global and regional forum for these discussions. And I therefore would appreciate and I really commend the effort of ITU-APT Forum of India in organizing this workshop, because as I understand, it is very important that we arrive at a common consensus before any ITU recommendations or contributions to be accepted. And India has been so far contributing in a lot of way, but we are not the leaders, and we have to strive to be one. And for this, APT conference in Australia is a very important conference and event, and I hope the participation from India would be significant, and not only participation, contribution from India also will be significant. I wish you all a very productive and insightful discussion today, and I hope that this association of ITU-APT, Forum of India and industry and DOT will continue forever, and whatever we are striving for, we come out successfully to make India as the world leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Gunjan, for coming and gracing the occasion, and also for your words of wisdom. It's time for the vote of thanks. I request Professor N.K. Goyal, his Vice Chairman IFI and Chairman Emeritus TEMA, to kindly come here and deliver the vote of thanks.
नमस्कार, प्रणाम। आज एक बड़ा अनयूजुअल दिन है। फर्स्ट टाइम ऑन द डाइस आई एम सीइंग गुंजन दवे जी, मेंबर टेक्नोलॉजी, विद मित्र साहब, मिस्टर परवेज फ्रॉम एपीटी, और हमारे पास काफ़ी सीनियर ऑफिसर्स यहाँ बैठे हैं। मिस्टर दीपक चतुर्वेदी, एक्स मेंबर सर्विसेज, अभी शायद कहीं बाहर निकल गए, एमपीएस आलवा जी, भागीरथ जी, अविनाश अग्रवाल जी, टीईसी, ITU की काफ़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग टीम है। TR दुआ साहब हमारे चेयरमैन, भरत भाटिया जी, SC सोनी वाइस प्रेसिडेंट, जितेंद्र सिंह जी डायस पे हैं, HC सक्सेना जी, RP अग्रवाल जी, RK मिश्रा जी, एवरीबडी। आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, गुंजन दवे जी का, मित्र साहब का। मैं एक बात कहनी चाहता हूँ मेंबर टीम को। आपने कहा कि हम लीडर नहीं हैं कंट्रीब्यूशंस में, ऐसा होता था कुछ साल पहले तक। पिछले साल में तो ये ज़बरदस्त चेंज हुआ है, स्पेशली रेवती जी जब से हमारी इलेक्ट हुई हैं विद रिकॉर्ड नंबर्स, और आज की तारीख में शायद भाटिया जी या और कोई बताएंगे, कोई 25-30 ग्रुप्स हैं जहां हम वाइस चेयरमैन या चेयरमैन हैं, और हमारे कंट्रीब्यूशन भी काफ़ी हो रहे हैं। और मित्र साहब जो आज डाइस पे बैठे हैं, टीसी के हेड एडवाइज़र हैं, इनके पास काफ़ी जिम्मेदारी आई है, क्योंकि मंत्री जी भी कहते हैं और हमारी सरकार, प्राइम मिनिस्टर भी कहते हैं, स्टैंडर्ड्स, वन स्टैंडर्ड फॉर ऑल इंडिया। तो ये काफ़ी जिम्मेदारी से चल रहा है। क्योंकि मिस्टर परवेज जी यहाँ APT से, तो आई जस्ट वांट टू शेयर समथिंग आउट ऑफ बॉक्स। लेट अस एक्सेप्ट इंडिया हैज़ चेंज इन द लास्ट 9 years। आज वर्ल्ड इंडिया को टेलीकॉम लीडर की कैपेसिटी में देख रहा है। वी आर नोन फॉर 4G लोकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, the only third country in the world to make 4G. We are known for fastest 5G rollout. We are known for 6G. We are known, thank you, we are known for Make in India, for PLI, for digital infra, digital payments, and we are also known as the most trusted country partner for trusted telecom products. Thanks to MTCTE of TEC and trusted telecom policy, आज हमारे पास करीबन 19-20 कंट्रीज से डिमांड आई हुई है मंत्री जी के पास फॉर सप्लाई ऑफ 5G इक्विपमेंट्स। और ITU-APT हमारी एक फ्लैग बेरर एसोसिएशन है जो स्पेक्ट्रम पे और टेलीकॉम मैटर्स पे काम करती है। मिस्टर भाटिया, मैं अक्सर कहता हूँ, फॉर द लास्ट आई थिंक मोर देन 40 years ही इज अटेंडेड ऑलमोस्ट एवरी मीटिंग ऑफ ITU और APT वेरेवर इट इज। और जैसा हमारी मेंबर टीम ने कहा कि ITU का कंट्रीब्यूशन काफ़ी माना जाता है। कल की जो मीटिंग थी उसमें सैटेलाइट के ऊपर सारी बातचीत हुई थी और काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग डिस्कशंस थे। आई वांट टू थैंक ऑल द डेलीगेट्स हियर, ईच वन ऑफ यू, एंड लेट मी आल्सो टेक अपॉर्चुनिटी ऑफ थैंकिंग आवर ITU टीम, आरूज एंड अदर्स। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you, Professor Goyal. So by this, we come to the end of the inaugural session. It's time to give away the mementos. I request Shri T.R. Dua ji to kindly give the mementos to our esteemed guest, Ma'am Gunjan Dave. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again for coming and gracing the occasion. It's always a pleasure to have you around. to Shri R.R. Mittal. Once again, thank you, Mr. Mittal, for coming over. And to Professor N.K. Goel. Now I request Mr. Bhatia to kindly give the mementos to Shri Dua. Thank you so much, Mr. Dua. We can have a group photograph, so all the esteemed members can come together. So with this, we come to the end of the inaugural session. We'll wait for a short tea break for 10 minutes, and right after 10 minutes, we'll resume for the first technical session, which is going to be very interesting. So see you after 10 minutes. Thank you. first session. After that hot cup of tea or coffee and with some nice snacks, I think we are all geared up for the first session. May I request everyone to kindly please join us here in the hall so that we can begin with a very interesting session. Shri M.P.A. Salawa. He is working as a Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor in WPC Wing. He coordinates on various radio frequency spectrum issues with stakeholders to frame our country views for international bodies such as ITU-APT, etc. He has played an important role in formulating National Frequency Allocation Plan 2018, and he was involved in drafting Indian contribution to WRC-19 and has also participated in WRC-19. Thank you so much, sir, for coming and chairing the session. For the keynote presentation, I would like to invite Shri Sachin Kumar. He is an IRS officer, presently working as an Assistant Wireless Advisor in WTC Wing since 2018. He joined the services as an engineer in WPC Wing in 2012 and served in various units of WPC. He has also worked as executive engineer at Airport Authority of India and assistant manager in MTNL. Presently handling international relations for ITU radio communication sector, ITU-APT, to protect the interest in an administration at ITU. A very warm welcome, Mr. Sachin. Also with him, for the key presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Puneet Rathore, Lead Technical Standards Qualcomm with more than 15 years of wireless research and development experience. Dr. Rathore has a diverse experience of working as an academic researcher and a co-founder of a startup which deployed equipment in public safety agencies in India and multinational companies. He has contributed to national international standardization efforts at 3GPP, IEEE, and ITU-R. His recent work has been focused on spectrum and standardization as lead technical standards with Qualcomm standards and industry organization. A very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Now for the key presentation, I would like to call upon Mr. Shiru Fukumoto. He is the Director of Standardization, Department of SoftBank Corp, and assumes a similar role at HAPS Mobile, responsible for spectrum-related international standardization activities in ITU-R, APT, and 3GPP for both companies. He has around 15 years of experience in the telecommunications sector, addressing regulatory and technology standardization aspects. He played a leading role in the key discussion on HAPS at WRC-19, ITU-R, and APT. A very welcome, Mr. Fukumoto, and thank you for coming. Also in the panel for the key presentation, I'd like to call upon Ms. Nada Abdul Hafiz. She's the Head of Spectrum and Regulatory Affairs for Middle East and Africa at Shuru Inc. In her role, she educates and promotes the spectrum needs for the PMSC industry in the MEA region. She influences regulations, ensures access for spectrum, advocates spectrum policy, and promotes new technology for audio PMSE. Nada works closely with administrations, regulatory authorities, and policymakers to enable PMSE in MEA. Now I request the session chair, Mr. Lava, to kindly lead, and the stage is set for the key presentation. The mics are there.
Hello. Thank you very much. And that inaugural session what we have attended, it was very inspiring from all our leaders. Very good thing has been spoken by all the speakers, right from member technology, DDG, senior DDG, and Mr. Fardul Parvez, who has spoken all the process of APT, and all these things give some information related to some activities. So in this session, this is a technical session. This technical session we will be covering in two parts. First will be the keynote presentation, followed by discussion on the agenda item. So, good afternoon, all the participants, distinguished guests on this dais. So, in this technical session, we will be covering agenda item 1.1, which is about the protection of aero mobile stations and maritime mobile stations at the international airspace and international water. So currently there are some certain kind of protection has been given. Whether that protection need to be revised or not, so that will be covered under agenda item 1.1. And second agenda will be covering that was related to identification of spectrum below 10 gigahertz. So there are many sub-bands are there, 6 sub-bands are there. So whether IMT can be accommodated in that band, that discussion we will take. That is agenda item 1.2. Thereafter, there will be agenda item 1.3, which is for the region 1 countries, though we do not have any strong opinion on that one, but still we will have a discussion in order to get our assignment protected against agenda item 1.3. Thereafter, we will be having a session of 1.4 that is related to HIPS, and here we have got expert from the Japan, so he will throw a light on that one. And I hope we are looking Mr. Shiro Fukumoto since long, and he has devoted a lot of time on agenda item 1.4. Initially we have seen that he was presenting HAPS, now he'll be presenting on HIPS. Since he has devoted much time, so his views on this will be valuable for us, to us. But it is very unfortunate that delegate from Department of Space, they are not present. They are busy with Chandrayaan-3 launch. This is the reason. Otherwise, it would be a very interesting discussion for agenda item 1.4. So this is about the agenda item 1.4. Then coming to agenda item 1.5, which is right from 470 to 960 megahertz band, which is again a region 1 agenda item. So as we know that broadcasting in region 1 is very strong, so still they are continuing the terrestrial broadcasting in the region 1 country, but our country has moved little far, and we have shifted our broadcasting to some other technology. So 1.5 will be covering that part. So all these agenda items we will be discussing. So in order to have a presentation on this one, we have got four presentation, a keynote presentation. So first I would like to call Mr. Sachin Kumar, Assistant Wireless Advisor, to present on agenda item 1.2, 1.1, 1.2 and 1.4. Sachin, please.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. The first session in the morning, the stage is set. We had listened for views from the Bharat 6G vision, India coming towards the leadership in the 4G, 5G development, and looking towards leadership in the IMT 2030 6G. So WRC agenda items 1.1, 2 and 4 are concentrating on these aspects, fixed and mobile issues. So just before this session, some of the participants were asking me, they want to join these discussions, preparations of the WRC. So for the benefit, I am displaying here the working groups under NPC which are working for preparation of all the WRC agenda items. And my presentation today is concentrated on the fixed mobile issues, 1.1, 2, and 4. So as you all are aware that NPC, since its constitution for WRC-23, has been working in this two-tier mode for discussion with stakeholders, first at the working group level and then at the NPC level. So all the views are listened, heard, and then whatever contributions were submitted, discussions held in the ITU study groups, the draft CPM report got discussed in the CPM2, and finally we are having CPM report, which is the base document for the WRC. And to this CPM report, there will be input contribution from member states and the mostly weighted regional organizations who have a major impact on the decisions at the conference. So now coming to this agenda item 1.1, it is about studying the PFD limits, protection measures for aeronautical and maritime mobile services which are located in international airspace and waters in this 4800 to 4990 megahertz band. And this agenda item concentrates on revising this footnote 5.441b, which was modified in WRC-19. Earlier, this footnote contained name of only 3 countries from WRC-15. So this was revised in WRC-19, where 40 countries, majorly region 1, and 4 administrations from region 3, that is administration of China, Iran, Korea, and Vietnam, they listed themselves in this footnote and identified this band for IMT as a very important mid-band. But in WRC-19, there were no studies to support the technical conditions for implementation. So the limits which were decided in the last of WRC-19, that limits of 155 dB watt per meter square, that limit still remains, and this agenda was set to do the studies for revision of this, look into revision of these PFD limits. And this limit is currently there at the border, 19 kilometers in the air and 20 kilometers from the lowest point. So CPM report lists out these 6 methods to satisfy this agenda item. Methods A and B are providing no change into the radio regulation. That means this limit, PFD limit, by which IMT stations, administrations are not able to deploy the IMT stations with this limit. So methods A and B are about no change, but method B is slightly different, where in WRC-19 there was also an exemption given to 11 administrations on which this limit does not apply. So major administrations like Brazil, Russia, South Africa, China, they are still exempted from these PFD limits. Then we are having method C and D, which list out 5 alternate PFD limits ranging from -115 to -140. These are based on various studies which are conducted and submitted to ITU Working Party 5D, and now they are part of the CPM report. Then methods E and F are more about bilateral and multilateral coordination between the administrations, and some regional groups are also supportive of these methods, that they don't need any PFD limits, and this 9.21 bilateral and multilateral coordination is sufficient for satisfying the concern of neighboring or nearby administrations. Now, coming to the further developments after CPM2, last month in the 44th meeting of WP5D, additional technical studies were submitted which were not given full consideration by 5D, but they are present as an additional information in the ITU WRC-23 web page for WRC studies. And this will be available for the administrations and for the conference to look at before deciding any method in this agenda item. Then major issues, as told by Alawa sir also in this, remains a lot of discussion happened regarding the definition of international waters, protection of stations in the international waters when they are not listed in the MIFR, and all those debates happened in the Working Party 5D and during CPM also. So some of the regional groups have inclination towards certain methods, but they are not yet finalized because all the regional groups are going to have their one final meeting is left for all the regional groups. Some 2 groups will be having their final meeting in August, and the other 4 groups will be having final meeting in September. So after September, then only we can say firmly that this regional group has identified this method for itself. So 3 key issues are still remaining to be discussed in the further platforms for us in India in APG 6. First one is modification of PFD limits. What PFD mask should be there on IMT stations for the protection of aeronautical and maritime mobile stations. Then how the 9.21 will be applied. There will be conditions in the resolution which will be applicable to all the administrations. And then there are certain methods which proposes deletion of this Resolve 5, which provides exemption to 11 administration on whom the PFD limit does not apply as per 5441B. So these are the further developments and discussions which are required to address this agenda item. So in this agenda item, this has been discussed in NPC and the working groups, but there are divergent views within the stakeholders. So in APG 4 and 5, the views were not submitted with respect to any method. But there was also a contribution made to Working Party 5D in which certain modifications were done in draft CPM text. This was done in the October meeting. So currently, Working Group 1 has discussed its positions with the stakeholders, and now it is lying with the final decision of NPC and approval. But the 2 factors which are taken into consideration is protection of the aeronautical and maritime stations, the ways to protect it through a PFD limit, through 9.21, and the existing uses. What are the existing uses in India? So we are having government uses, fixed usages. PPDR is part of this band in the last 50 megahertz, 4940 to 4990. So these all are requiring final decisions. So let me throw some light on the regional positions. Like in CPT, as per their latest update in July, they are proposing 2 kinds of PFD limits in different portion of this band. The RCC administrations, they oppose any PFD limits and they advocate the use of 9.21. CTEL has not finalized its position, but USA as a major administration has views that 9.21 is not sufficient and a PFD value is required. And in their last submission, they submitted edited method C and D in their contribution to 5D meeting. Now coming to the next agenda item 1.2, which is the main agenda item for identifying mid-band, all the bands below 10 gigahertz, So as you can see that most agenda items in mid-band 3300 to 3400 are pertaining to region 1 and 2, and only this 6425 to 7025 is pertaining to region 1, where region 3 administrations are also having some views on it, and the band 7025 to 7125 is in agenda for a global identification, and then there is a 10 gigahertz band for region 2 identification. So coming to the India positions for this agenda item. So in band 1, the region 1 band, as we all are aware, that band from 3300 to 3670 megahertz has already been identified for IMT in the National Frequency Allocation Plan, which was released in October 22. And the portion 3300 to 3600 megahertz is already auctioned and provided to telecom service providers for giving the IMT services. So India is very supportive in identification, looking it as a term of global harmonization, which will bring more economies of scale. So we are supportive of identification in region 1, but subject to the condition that no primary services should be affected in region 3 from the region 1 IMT implementations. So similar approach for implementation of 33 to 34 in region 2. Now coming to the most debated, the 6 gigahertz band. In agenda, it is for the region 1, but as you can see, the world is divided here. Region 1 has identified some portion adjacent to the band for unlicensed use, and then in region 2 is using the entire band for the unlicensed one, and this blue part is the only part of this agenda, 64252 7125. So all these international positions are being considered. So in band 4, it is being discussed nationally for the protection of incumbent services. A portion of this band is also a part, 300 megahertz is part of Appendix 30B, the planned band. And there is a demand for new applications in Wi-Fi and IMT both. So both demands and the protection of incumbent services are being discussed, and studies are being carried out for determining the best possible use. Another angle is that some region 3 administrations, they have announced to propose footnotes for region 3 administrations in the upcoming APG6 and WRC-23. And there will be also a new proposal for a new agenda item for studying this band in region 3. So a position is also required on these aspects in this 6 gigahertz band. So coming to band 5, so since the APG meetings and the ITU meetings, India has been very supportive in identification of this band for IMT by creating a new footnote without any additional conditions or constraints. Now, just a short glimpse at some regional positions, like in region 1 also, it is supportive of identification for 33 to 34, even in region 1 and 2, but they claim there should be no interference to the radio location services. CTEL is supportive 33-34 for region 2, and they have also provided a new footnote for the protection of radio location services. RCC administrations, they are inclined towards method 1A and 1B, and they don't have any objection for identification of this band in region 2. Now coming to this band 2, 36 to 38. So for region 2, CPT is supportive, and CTEL has progressed in this. They are having draft inter-American proposals for modification of the footnotes, and they want to maintain it. In RCC administration, they are inclined towards method 3A and 3D from the CPM report. So coming to the 6 gigahertz band, let's look at it because it's a region 1 agenda. So the positions taken by the regional groups of region 1, that is CPT and RCC, becomes very important. That CPT is considering both the options, considering IMT and Wi-Fi or a shared framework. But some of the administration in CPT, they also, I want to identify it as an IMT band. So the position is not clear as of now. So we will be waiting for their final CPT meeting, which is proposed in September. And further, they are also discussing a new agenda item for WRC-27. So inter-American proposals are not finalized, but since you have seen that some administrations in CETL, they have already are using this band for Wi-Fi in unlicensed mode, so they are proposing no change for the identification of this band. RCC administrations are supportive of identification with respect to the protection condition of various services for the satellites, for SRS, SOS, ESS, and they are inclined towards method 4D and 5D, as I told earlier, which propose 9.21 coordination. So coming to the last agenda, 1.4, this is identification for the IMT, currently used IMT bands as high altitude platform station HIBS bands. So in this, these 4 bands are being discussed: 694 to 960, 1700 band, 2500 band, and then this 2600 band. So currently India also supports identification for HIBS in all these bands, but we also seek protection for our existing satellite services in the S band, NAVIC services in 2.4 gigahertz, which is used for the navigation purposes in Indian NAVIC system. And these bands are currently used by the service provider for providing IMT services, so the protection of current existing IMT services should also be ensured. So with this, the bands following methods were supported in APG 5 for 694, 1700, 1800 and 2100, use of HIBS in a single footnote but on a non-protection basis. And for the 2500 band, the position was no change, since there is a stakeholder concern that it will impact our satellite services. So coming to the regional positions for this agenda 1.4, in CPT is also supportive, and there is an additional thing that an HIBS system can be allowed at above 18 kilometers also, since there is no difference. So the CPT administration, they support HIBS on a non-protection basis. CETL administrations, some are proposing no change. In RCC also, they are seeking protection for various services, aeronautical services, satellite services, meteorological services. And in bands A1 and A3, these are the methods which RCC administrations are considering, and then methods B3, C3 and D3. That means the 2500 band, RCC administration are supportive for HIBS even in the 2500 megahertz band. So coming to the end of it, that we are currently here. The next important event ahead of us is APG 6 and the inter-regional workshop, where we will get the final views of all the regional organizations, which would shape the discussions during the WRC-23. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sachin, for giving presentation on 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, and for whatever the position Sachin has indicated in his presentation, it is most likely to get converted into views India, but still some agenda items remain where we need to decide our position. That is agenda item 1.1 and band 4 of 1.2. So we will decide on that one. So next on my list for presentation is Mr. Punit Rathod, leading technical standard Qualcomm. So he will be presenting on agenda item 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3. Punit, please.
Thank you. And a lot of information that I had planned to share is already covered in the previous presentation by Sachin, and thank you for that. So I will also be able to leverage that information for this audience, and then continue forward by adding additional perspective towards those different agenda items. I also plan to add some more information about the technical analysis that was done during the preparation of the CPM, and towards the studies that happened in these different agenda items. So starting with agenda item 1.1, the overall scope was already discussed, and the band is already identified for IMT, and the scope of this agenda was to look at the conditions for protecting aeronautical and maritime services. And if we look into the footnote, which is describing the protection criteria, so there is this range 4800 to 4990, and then the use of IMT stations is subject to the agreement under 9.21. And if we look at a brief history of how this particular agenda started developing, and the identification of IMT in this range, in the overall range there are already allocations or possibilities of utilizing aeronautical and maritime services. The parts where aeronautical services are utilized, the typical kind of use cases could be unmanned aircraft services, live rescue, communications above the sea level, and primarily a lot of these use cases are harmonized from the NATO use cases. It is also that if we look at these kind of use cases within the land area, and from that perspective, the coexistence or the possibility of usage of both aeronautical and IMT is not very practicable. If we look at the maritime service, the history of this agenda is like in WRC-15, this band was identified, and there were certain protection criteria which is already in the part of footnote 5.441b. And the protection criteria, whatever was identified, was in this footnote during WRC-15. And this particular criteria was subject to revision in WRC-19. As we went into WRC-19, what eventually happened was that the protection criteria never got revised, but additional countries got added to the footnote. And a lot more countries got added to the footnote, more than 37 countries got added, including countries from Russia, China, Africa, South America like Brazil and so on. And further, one of the resolves, Resolve 5, was also suppressed. And that is where we are, and further details of the different methods was already discussed in sufficient detail, and we are already discussing this within the National Preparatory group. So I will not go into the details of the different methods, but I will proceed to agenda item 1.2 discussion. Within agenda item 1.2, we have multiple bands under discussion. Band 1, band 2, which are in the 3.3 to 3.4 gigahertz. In one case, it is for amending the footnote for region 1. In the second band, it is for region 2. Band 3 is 3.6 to 3.8, which is for region 2. Band 4 and 5 in the 6 to 7.1 to 5 megahertz range. Band 4 for region 1 and band 5 globally. And then finally band 6, which is in the 10 gigahertz range. And if we look at all of these different bands, what I will try to focus the rest of this 1.2 related presentation of mine is to look at the incumbent services that are part of this agenda, and then where the different studies focus the efforts. So in the 3.3 to 3.8 gigahertz, on the lower part it is radio location service, which is the primary incumbent, and then in the 3.6 to 3.8 it is FSS downlink and the fixed service, which is the main incumbent for region 2. So that is the main scope from the studies of this particular agenda. In the 6 gigahertz, both band 4 and band 5, there is the appendix 30B, which is from 6725 to 7025. There is also FSS uplink in most of the band, FSS downlink in the in 6725 and above, and then there is fixed service for most of the band, and then in the adjacent service there is space operation service and space research, which is in the adjacent part of the band. So with these multiple different services, the studies that happened within the Working Party 5D focused on different parameters and trying to understand the coexistence possibility with these different incumbent services. Within Working Party 5D, the studies considered different positions of the geostationary orbit for global, hemi beam, zonal beam and spot beams, and within the Working Party 5D, whenever the studies had a large variations in the way they were able to produce the results and derive conclusions out of the coexistence studies. And primary differences in these studies were driven by differences in the assumptions that were made for the studies. The IMT density, the satellite footprint, the FSS receiver characteristics, the clutter loss modeling, and the fixed services apportionment. And I think whenever we see these studies, even in the context of what is happening in India, we see a very similar discussion that a lot of the differences in the outcome of the studies is driven by the input assumptions, which are different. So there is very little difference in the whole methodology, because everybody agrees that the methodology is the same, but then the difference is primarily because of the input assumptions that we take for the study. For the FSS downlink, the studies show a particular separation distance which is required, which ranges from a few kilometers to a few tens of kilometers, and at least from the previous experience of the studies and even from the IMT deployment implementation perspective, we are able to have good mechanisms in place for having a method to protect these, but still there are the different outcomes were ranging for a separation distance of few kilometers to tens of kilometers. And finally, for the fixed services, there were again the outcomes range from a separation distance of 1 kilometer to around 60 kilometer odd, and the conclusions were primarily about whether the fixed service and the IMT service can be co-located in very close proximity with each other, and a lot of outcome was pointing towards that it might be difficult, and that is also reflected in the kind of CPM options that we see. And one of the options also acknowledges that for the IMT to be implemented, those administrations might consider a particular delayed approach where they get sufficient time to migrate the fixed services out of this band so that they can implement IMT in this particular band. So this was in the band 4 and 5, and then band 6 we have in the 10 gigahertz, where this was a very challenging study where we had ESS active as one of the incumbents, radio location fixed services, and then in the adjacent band RAS and ESS passive. And with all of this, I'll go fast on these next 2 or 3 slides because these methods were already covered by Sachin in the previous slide. So we have a few views. And then agenda item 1.3, this was for consideration of upgrade of the band 36 to 3800 megahertz in region 1 for mobile. And we had multiple incumbent services, and the intent of this agenda was to see if there can be upgrade for the mobile. And as an outcome of the study, there were multiple methods which were identified for the study from the CPM options perspective, ranging from no change, which is no upgrade, and then there were multiple options which propose that there may be a possibility to provide an upgrade with without conditions, with certain conditions, and the final option being upgrade to mobile with an additional allocation for IMT. So so these were the different methods, but then this is a region 1 agenda, so I think this is for us to see how this develops from a region 1 perspective, and then we can see how do we utilize that experience for India when we try to look for additional mid-band spectrum in the future. So with that, I would conclude my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Punitji, for giving in-depth information related to agenda item 1.1, 1.2. So that was really helpful. And next on my list for the keynote presentation is Mr. Shiro Fukumoto, Director, Standardization Department, SoftBank. He'll be presenting on agenda item 1.4. Mr. Shiro, please.
My presentation. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, IAFI, for giving me an opportunity to present. Okay. I'll start my presentation. Here is agenda item 1.4, HIBS. Again, my name is Shiro Fukumoto. I'm from SoftBank. SoftBank is one of the mobile network operators in Japan. I sometimes asked SoftBank why bank is here in the international ITU discussion. We are not bank, we are mobile network operator, and we are very keen to use this solution for the 6G era. Fortunately, at this presentation, we do not present any information about what is HIBS or progress of the HIBS commercialization. We would like to focus on the agenda item 1.4, this presentation. And here is the overall schedule to our WRC. As you know, the next APG meeting in Brisbane in August is the last meeting of the preparation for APT region. It's a very important thing. And there's some information about the CPT-RCC CTEL meeting in May. There are very good progress regarding this agenda item 1.4, and I hope in R2 in August, as well as ASMG September, decides some good progress on the agenda item 1.4 as well. And here is the CPM report. I'd like to skip this slide because Mr. Sachikuma already explained about the which method are currently developed in CPM report. There's whole method. Among whole method, we highly encourage you to support for method X2 in all frequency band because method X1 NOC is basically the default standard method which there is no protection conditions regarding the method. But we already developed method X2, X3, X4, the common protection condition for existing services. So we think method X1 NOC do not need to consider for the country proposal. And also the method X3, we think this method is not needed for considering the Hibbs operation. Method X3 means not claiming protection from existing service. But method X3 does not provide any additional protection condition for existing services. This is a very important thing. Method X3 do not help to protect existing services. And also the interference from existing service for Hibbs would not be problem. I will show the next slide for our preliminary study result for the interference from IMT base station to Hibbs. And also the such provision could be precedent setting a future IMT identification not as an application. So that I will explain about one by one for the interference analysis from IMT base station to Hibbs. Yeah, we calculated two calculations for the scenario 1 and 2, which Hibbs comply with the PFD limitation currently stipulated in the draft, currently stipulated in the CPM report. Scenario 1, Hibbs comply with the PFD limit by separation distance, which is the right side figure of this slide. And scenario 2, Hibbs comply with the PFD limit with the beam control. Beam control may be employed when Hibbs will operate near border. As you can see the picture, these Hibbs do not transmit the whole beam which direct to the other countries. And here is our interference calculation result. The red line is a higher line is the protection criteria of the protection of Hibbs, and the other orange and blue line is the interference level. As you can see, interference level always below the protection criteria for Hibbs, so that no interference from IMT base station to Hibbs is happened when Hibbs comply with the PFD limit. And here is also important thing for the 6G error. With SoftBank, as I mentioned, is of course one of the mobile network operator. So we are of course would like to provide Hibbs around the world, but we still mobile network operator. And from mobile network operator point perspective, in the 6G era, you are very known that interworking with NTN, especially Hibbs, is key for the next generation network, because connect and ubiquitous connectivity are already developed in the 6G. I mean, the IMT 2030 framework recommendation in June, and it will formally adopted in the SG5 in September. In any case, we need NTN as mobile network operator perspective as one of the tower base station, which is currently provided by the cell tower company. So we think Hibbs is one of the co-share base station tower provided by Hibbs company, but provided whole mobile network operator to extend the network. In this regard, if method X3 introduced as a result of this agenda item, mobile network operator, including covered by NTN network, does not have a right to fair condition with other existing services. I think it is a very bad situation for mobile network operators if they use NTN, including Hibbs, in their future network. And most of mobile network operator, I think, will use NTN to extend their coverage, because even in Japan, actually, some mobile network operators are interested in use satellite direct to cell from some satellite companies. So that, we need a mobile method X2. Method X2 can maintain coordination fairness against other services. So here is a regulatory condition to protect other primary services. From 3 years ITUR study, technical and regulatory conditions are developed which ensure the existing services. Of course, there are some options, but we can manage in the WRC-23 to self with regulatory, with some regional proposal. And I, of course, recognize that India concern about MSS in 2.6 GHz frequency range for interference from HIBs, especially to the satellite receiver. But this is a very important slide I prepared to this event. Yeah, as you can see the slide, above the top one is the frequency allocation of the region 3 for satellite services. You can see the 2500, 2535, and 2655 to 269T 90 allocated for MSS. But you see the blue bar, which is the HIBS candidate frequency band. I mean the frequency band subject for agenda item 1.4. This frequency range for the lower band, 2500, 2535, is only for uplink. But HIBS is provided for the normal user handset, such as smartphone. So the uplink is the completely same situation for the current terrestrial IMT. And the 2655 through 269T is not subject to this agenda item. So in region 3, these frequency range will never use in the future. In that case, no interference from HIBS to MSS within region 3. Even in region 1, we recognize that there is no interference from MSS to Indian satellite system. There are some reasons I mentioned in the following text. Yeah, because distance between region 1 countries from the most near country is around 600 kilometers from India border. This is far from beyond radio horizon. That does not cause harmful interference to MSS Earth station in 2500, 2535 megahertz. And also, ITR study shows that the sharing between HIBS in region 1 and MSS space station for India, I mean the 83E orbit, is feasible using the antenna contour provided by India. So here is a summary. I'd like to conclude my presentation with some message. So as I explained, this agenda paved the way to the mobile network operator network using the HIBS as one option. So we strongly encourage you to not consider about method X1 NOC because we have enough adequate protection condition in CPM report, and we also does not recommend to consider about method X3 for some reason I mentioned in this summary text. So we propose method X2 is a band is most suitable to make enabling provision for HIBS. With that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shiro Fukumoto, for telling brief on 1.4 and your concern related to agenda band D and your concern regarding the method what we have contributed in APG5, that is 1D. And the last slide you have also shown that with regard to 83, our satellite in MMS, as per your proposal there is no interference, but still we need to discuss with the concerned authority because we have bad experience, and that experience is known to ITU as well. and we don't want further damages to our transponder. That was the reason behind that we have gone for 1D. And thank you very much for bringing out the facts. And next on my list is Miss Nada Abdel Hafiz, Head of Spectrum and Regulatory Affairs, MEA, from Shure Incorporated. She will be presenting on agenda item 1.5.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the ITU-APT Foundation of India for organizing this excellent event and fruitful discussions. Also, special thanks to Mr. Bhatia for inviting me to the National Preparatory Workshop. I'm Nada Abdel Hafiz. I'm responsible for the Spectrum and Regulatory Affairs for the Middle East and Africa region at Shure. Let me first of all introduce Shure. So for the past almost 100 years, Shure started from a humble wholesale retailer in a small garage in Chicago by our founder, Mr. Sidney Shure. And now we grow to become the worldwide industry standard setter for superior and reliable audio products. Now, many can question why we are here as wireless audio microphone manufacturers, and I'll be happy to elaborate on my presence today. So our products are widely utilized and deployed in the program making and special events industry. So PMSE, in short. PMSE, I think, yeah. So PMSE is an ITU inclusive term that covers wireless PMSE devices such as the wireless microphones, the in-ear monitoring systems, talkback systems, and wireless video cameras, and then the scenery control systems. So really, the deployment of our products are widely integrated into various industries. To name a few, the theater, film production, broadcasting, TV, government venues, the venue that we are in right now, we have been seamlessly and effectively using wireless microphones throughout the workshop today and yesterday. And you can see behind this black box the audio specialists with their receiver equipments supporting us and ensuring that we have effective communications. Now, I would like to share and shed a light on PMSE in India. So PMSE, as I mentioned, it's widely used, heavily integrated in events. It is ubiquitous to everyday life. You can see that it's trusted to be used in governmental events, sports, live theater productions, and in India specifically, in the Geo World Trade Center, it's the Geo World Center, we have 200 channels that needs 100 megahertz of spectrum. And we are expecting that with the growth and the innovation and change in the entertainment industry in India, we expect more spaces to come in Bangalore, Delhi, and hence we need more spectrum to support these locations and venues. So to shed a light on India's music industry, the live events, film and online video services, well, we can never forget that India is the home of Bollywood. And to look at also the breakdown here of India's music market across three main industries, live music, recording and streaming, we can see that the largest segment is the live sector segment, producing around $280 million. And also, if we look at the live events market, it's forecasted by this year to grow to 95 billion rupees. Similarly, the OVS market is also expected to increase by 30%. And this shows how much PMSE enables these industries and then it contributes to the society and the economy of the country. So a question that I've always been hearing from different participants in the workshops how much spectrum does PMSE need? And I'm pretty sure that everyone was maybe a little bit surprised by the amount of spectrum that the Geo World Center requires. So a study done by the Swiss Radio and TV looked at 111 events for 3 years, and they were able to categorize the spectrum for PMSE based on the event size. So they divided the size of the events to small daily events, then large regular events, and finally major events. And as you can see, for daily usage, around 50 megahertz, almost 42 as the report mentions, is required for daily use, for electrical news gathering, for maybe small news production or film production. And then for large events, like a concert or a sports live events, around 100 megahertz is required. And then finally, for large or major international events like Expo or the Olympics, more than 174 megahertz of spectrum is required. Now, looking at the characteristics or the favorable characteristics that we require in the UHF band, or basically a spectrum below the 1 gigahertz, well, due to the desirable characteristics of that band, and simply due to physics, we have favorable propagation in the UHF band. We have low body absorption effects in the band because mostly the in-ear devices, the wireless microphones are held very close to the body, as you can see in this picture of the live performer. And also it offers interference-free and predictable behavior, since we are sharing the spectrum with the TV broadcasters, so we can recognize the channels that the broadcasters are using. So to look at the Indian Premier League event that happened this year, this is a screenshot of Shure's wireless workbench. And you can see during the opening ceremony, the thin green lines. So each thin green line is a 200 kilohertz channel spacing that is utilized for a wireless audio device. And the entire spectrum from 470 up to 694, plus some channels in the 700 and 800 guard or duplex channels were also utilized during the opening ceremony. And this shows how much such an event that would require a zero failure, 100% reliability, top quality is required to be delivered in such events. Similarly, looking at the UAE Expo, the same screenshot also was taken by the Shure Wireless bench. You can also see 470 up to 710 megahertz of spectrum was utilized. The thin white lines here show the wireless audio PMSE devices. And then for future or upcoming events, Paris Olympics Committee, they released their spectrum plan that you can perhaps see later. And in addition to the entire UHF band, the Olympic Committee with the ANFR, the French regulator, they have also opened 3 bands in the 1.x range, specifically the 1240 to 1260, 1350 to 1400, and we believe somewhere from 1400 to 1500. And this is only to cater for the expected demand for the Olympics game. They've also issued a statement to strongly recommend using wired devices to be able to utilize or to be able to cater for the demand of the expected people there. But I doubt that this will be used. I mean, in a small room, we were all not able to use a wired microphone. We were using a wireless throughout this workshop due to the ease and seamlessness of wireless devices. Now, let me share with you some updates on the agenda item 1.5. At Shure, we are a sector member of ITU, and we are heavily or very active in ITU proceedings and regional groups as well. So to give you an overview about what 1.5 states, so it calls for action in the 470 to 694 and consider like the possibility of having regulatory actions in that band. And the decision, of course, will be made in the upcoming WRC. As regarding to PMSE, there's a footnote 5.296 that allocates on secondary basis to land mobile, which is PMSE, and applications ancillary to broadcasting and program making. And there are various key administrations that we have been heavily interacting with. They're making sure that the PMSE needs are taken into considerations. And they understand that this would be required in almost every country that is planning to host big events in the future. So at SURE, we state that the PMSE needs a long-term spectrum solution, because at the end we need to make sure that we always have access to a stable piece of spectrum and not to always be able to change or have the spectrum reduced as it has been going for the past years. And next, we're also very active in the regional groups. We're attending CTEL, CEPT, ASMG, ATU, and are very involved in the discussions there to share some of the preliminary positions on the agenda item 1.5. So CTEL's position is neutral, similar to APT. There's till now in ATU, there's no decision yet. We expect to get to a preliminary position in the coming APM in Cameroon. And then we also have a somehow undecided ASMG position that they still haven't reached a consensus yet, but they're still studying the agenda item. However, for CEPT, things are a little bit different. They have 3 options on the table, starting with no change, first of all, but review till 2031. Then there's another option, which is change to primary, but not active before 2031. And finally, secondary allocation to mobile and potential then upgrade to primary in 2031. As for the RCC, their position is no change. That's fixed for now. Not only that, but CEPT and ASMG groups, they fully recognize and support that PMSE needs to find a solution to be able to seamlessly access the spectrum. So we had Mr. Tariq Al-Awadi, who was the director of the spectrum affairs at the UAE regulator. He actually presented, when he spoke about this specific agenda item, he shared that PMSE in the UAE is the prime user during the last Mobile World Congress. And we are actively working with the regulator to be able to find a solution for PMSE in the UAE. So, in summary, we need to highlight and advocate that PMSE industry needs access to the 470 to 694 megahertz band, and we would continue sharing with TV, and that it's important to have a globally harmonized spectrum for PMSE usage. And we fully support APT's position that the agenda item 1.5 is a region 1 issue, and that it should in no way affect region 3 allocations for the future use of the band. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nada. When you started your presentation, immediately on the first slide, it was written that microphone. I was wondering how it is related to agenda item 1.5. Thereafter, you shown the second slide where there was our Prime Minister was speaking on the this microphone. Then immediately on my right side, Mr. Vikramji pick up this mic. And he had shown me SURE has been written there. So we are also using the mic of SURE only, but I don't know on what frequency this mic is working. So we are also wondering, whole industry is using the mic and everywhere it's mic. So as we have understood from your presentation that you wanted to go with APG views, I think so, with no change in radio regulations. This is what you are supporting. but initially we have some different position, but later on in APG we may have some different. Initially we have presented that okay, whatever you wanted to do it should not affect Indian region 3 frequency allocation table. So that was, so we do not have strong views on this also, but still we need to discuss on this one. So at the end I would like to summarize, not on the agenda item. First I will summarize on agenda item 1.2, band 4. In band 4 we could not able to decide our position because of divergent views. We have seen the interest in band 4 that there is the interest of Wi-Fi, there is the interest of IMT, there is also interest of enabling private satellite player. So you can understand the situation why we have not taken the decision in band 4. We have got the divergent views. So this is the reason. And on agenda item 1.1, again we have got existing usages, and with the existing usages we got the proposal that with the existing PFD limit we are happy, and there were also contribution from the industry side that we shall go with minus 117 dBW per meter square per megahertz for to give a protection to AMS, and I hope minus 115 for MMS. This was the proposal. Those discussion could not be concluded. Agenda item 1.1, so still discussion. So those are the facts which is available right now in our domain. I don't know, next discussion we may discover some more facts to take the final views, but we have got the facts. So this is just a summary about what we discussed today on the important issues. And next we will be having the panel discussions. So we can start with the panel discussion. So first, just general things like in last every agenda item text we need to study for the 4 years, and it has got various kind of stages. So on various stages you need to take certain kind of decision. First decision we have taken in APG 5 as a preliminary views. After discussions and after discussion on the facts, studies, and there is also a possibility that in APG these facts may change and administration may take some different decision, and APG views may also change. So under these circumstances, how we can, what in this situation, how to go about that one. So I just need to, because Sachinji is a little experienced here and he has attended last full WRC 19, so he may be giving some brief on that one. So I just request Sachinji to give some opinion on that one.
Thank you. Yes, the main purpose of administrations getting together at APG is to harmonize and finalize the APT common views which are submitted to WRC. But in between this APG 6 and WRC, there will be a third and final interregional workshop. And I attended the second interregional workshop in November, December last year. So this final interregional workshop will have the final views from all the regional organizations. And And mostly it will be APG views, but yes, there will be at the disposal of administration the interregional views which will be available in the it's about the battery. So this workshop and the final views from the regional organizations, they will be at the disposal, and administration will consider it before making final proposals to WRC-23. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sachin, for giving the brief. And we have seen a lot of development related to 6G and lot of documentation we have done. And we have with us Mr. Agrawalji related to 6G, if have related to sixth vision document, if he has got any opinion on that one. So if you would like to give some brief on that one, it will be really helpful.
Thank you. Just in the recently concluded meeting of Working Party 5D, India got a lot of success, and perhaps like already mentioned by our advisor TEC that India could get success in the one of the usual scenario of ubiquitous connectivity, and also some capabilities were added because of Indian contribution. So the next steps would be to develop the technology performance requirements and other documents to identify the 6G candidate technologies, evaluation criteria. So all these things are the next steps that we have to take, and as was mentioned earlier, that in the recently held workshop, our secretary and others also emphasized that we have to push and increase our contributions while taking together industry, academia, and all those. I think these are the few important steps. Like the framework document is there now, but the next TPR and other things, there we have to start working and contribute in a bigger manner. These are some of the initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for updating on 6G vision document. Actually, yesterday I was a little late while attending one session, so I was just trying to find it out, my place there. So I just sat over there in the second row, and I've observed that people are working on their laptop. So I also wanted to work on the laptop. So I asked on the right side, a few delegates were working there. I asked them, yeah, what is the password of Wi-Fi? So he told me that I'm using hotspot, not Wi-Fi. So I leaned back and set the position. Then again that gentleman told me, you are supporting Wi-Fi or you are supporting IMT? So I was totally blank at that moment, and I just keep staring that one. So now I think so we can have a discussion or discussion in this. I think so Mr. Vikramji is here. I think so he can perhaps throw a light on that one. Vikramji, please present your.
Thank you very much. I mean, that just about sums up, how data services are emerging and the importance of IMT. So while it's a panel discussion, I thought I'll just take this opportunity to share a few slides and the COI point of view. So at the outset, thank you very much. As Alawaji mentioned, there is a variation in approach and India's position for the agenda item 1.2, and I'll talk particularly related to the 6 gigahertz band very quickly. Next, please. Thank you. So the India position is here. If you see the 5G spectrum landscape and what India's objectives are. So if you see out in the table in the mid bands, how much spectrum do we actually have, right? So you total all this up, and potentially only 720 megahertz of spectrum, whereas there's a requirement of at least 2 megahertz, as Sachin had indicated. So what this highlights is that the mid-band spectrum is particularly of huge interest to the telecom service providers, right? How do we go next? Okay. So the 2 gigahertz, as I just mentioned, required in a time frame 2025 onwards, right? Now, in this, the bands, if you see at B, which are the potential bands? 6 gigahertz, 4.5 to 5, 3.3 to 4.2 potential bands. And the preparation requires about 5 to 10 years in advance. And therefore, currently, if you see in the bar at the bottom, we only have, as of today, 370. In fact, 300. 70 is not yet been given out, right? So this is the current situation. And as Alavaji highlighted, you know, there was a time maybe 4 or 5 years back where you actually looked out for and asked for a Wi-Fi password. With 4G and now 5G, all tariff plans are bundled, and you know the people looking out for Wi-Fi is not as much, and that too is a very urban phenomena. TRAI itself has acknowledged that India, almost 90% of all data is on IMT networks, and Wi-Fi is predominantly in urban areas. One of the reasons is that Wi-Fi requires a wire line backhaul, and we do not have as much wire line in India, and we are not going to get this wire line, whether it's optical fiber or any other wire line, in a 5 to 10 year time frame, right? So therefore, mobile network operators need surety for the business services. Particularly huge investments have been done, and the country's agenda, Digital India agenda. So in this, if you see, amongst the different bands is here in this particular place. So the importance of from 5925 to 7125. Earlier approaches in different regions have been indicated, but for us in India particularly, the entire 1200 is what we at COI are looking at. So the current situation, as I said, is only 33 to 3670. And on the other, in this table here, if you see, one needs a trade-off between coverage and capacity. And the mid-band particularly, and especially 6 gigahertz, is of a huge amount of importance to the IMT industry in India. Key aspects of the 6 gigahertz band: wide coverage and capacity, critical to achieving the government's agenda and to what the citizens want, as they do in making hotspots on the IMT and not really on Wi-Fi. And 6 is critical for enhancing 5G networks. And very importantly, we have 4 operators. So potentially the 1200 megahertz in this, you will get potentially a contiguous spot of about 300 to 400 in this band. You will not get as much contiguous spectrum in the other potential bands, whether it's 37 gigahertz and the other bands that are being considered. So that's why the importance. I thought I'd just draw your attention that India already has 688 megahertz in 2.4 and 5.8. That's a huge chunk of Wi-Fi spectrum. But, the little awkward part is 255 megahertz, which is almost, if say nearing about 50%, is not even being used because the devices are not configured, right? The point I'm drawing in red, which is down below, if you see in the bottom blue, 5570, this one, 5470, 5725, 255, not yet in use. So there is enough spectrum available to cater to, you may call it Wi-Fi, or offload, or even to satisfy any needs for indoor Wi-Fi coverage and capacities. So our suggestion is please utilize this and keep an eye out for this part rather than unlicense any further band. On the agenda item 10, so what we are saying is, a study in the band 7125 to 24, and of course the other one, so that's an agenda item for study, so that's something that can be considered. That's it. Thank you very much. This is what I thought I'd share.
Thank you very much. We will be having just two more questions, two quick questions. One to this Zero and another to Nada. So because we are hearing HAPS since long, we just wanted to know, is there any place where HAPS is giving services and in what band they are providing broadband services in any place? If you can give some idea on that one.
Thank you very much for the question for providing HAPS service. Yeah, actually, historically, HAPS was considered in around 20 years ago, but due to some technical improvements needed at that time, there is no commercial service at this moment of time still. But we are currently conducting some flight tests with communication payload providing mobile communication from stratosphere, so that soon we can show some release regarding the plan for the HAPS to provide expand mobile connectivity for the local mobile network operators. It is a fundamental of the HAPS service, HAPS and HIVS service from our perspective. And from the HAPS industry point of view, we established named HAPS Alliance in 2020. And in this alliance, there are not only SoftBank, but also the other companies such as Airbus or Sky, and recently changed the name, former Wabos, currently Mira. So the platform companies actively participate and discussing for the future of HAPS. Because recently there is a big improvement of core technology such as battery, motor, and solar panels. So that soon, I think we can show the very good service solutions using HAPS. Is it answer to you? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've got one question to Nada. Because Shure is providing this Wi-Fi in PMFSC, and we just wanted to know who are your competitor, because you have mentioned several bands, and for each vendor we cannot deal. So who are your competitor in the same band? Is there any competition you are facing?
You mean as in competition in the UHF band? Yeah. Currently, we are sharing the spectrum. So the UHF is allocated primarily for broadcasting services, and we have been successfully sharing as a secondary user. So to give an example, maybe it depends also on different countries. So where I'm coming from, the United Arab Emirates, they don't have much TV spectrum there because they don't have analog TV. So pretty much the spectrum is utilized most of the time by PMSC. But if you look at maybe some other countries in Africa, maybe where analog, or even in Europe, where analog TV is heavily used, we have little spaces maybe to share in between the broadcasting assigned channels. So it's not really a competition, but we have been successfully sharing the band with our broadcasting partners for the past 60 years. And the less spectrum now that we might face in the future will not only impact broadcasting, but it will also impact the accessible spectrum, because then the broadcasting services will have to move down the spectrum, and we would have less available spectrum to access.
Thank you very much. Due to time limitation, I can discuss later on. We have got Bashir Patel online. So, Bashir ji, you can take the floor and share your views.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. And greetings to all my colleagues sitting on the panel there. I must apologize for not being physically there in Delhi. I know you had a bit of a traffic problem this morning, which is no different from the traffic problem we get in London. But nevertheless, anyway, it's good to be joining you remotely. Unfortunately, I wish I was there in person, basically. Just very quickly, there are some very interesting points that are being brought up. And I really did have some questions for clarification on that from the panel members. Firstly, the notion of 2 gigahertz was being mentioned in terms of a requirement for IMT. This 2 gigahertz requirement is based on a report that the GSMA has generated based on their survey, based on their analysis of some 36 highly densely populated cities around the world, with a capability of providing services to connected cars at 100 megabit per second. Now, when you look at that kind of analysis, when you do that kind of detailed sort of study work, yes, you can come up with whatever volume of gigahertz of spectrum that you require. And that's basically the case, that GSMA report advocates 2 gigahertz of spectrum for mobile operators. It's based on such a study which has not been validated or verified by any other independent sort of analysis. So that is one of the difficulties that I have when we start quoting the requirements for MNOs and mobile operators in terms of the 2 gigahertz of spectrum that they think they need, and so on. The other question is regarding the position of the 6 gigahertz in Europe. Let me make it absolutely clear that the position in Europe here is that UK, for example, is certainly advocating no change in the 6 gigahertz band, along with many other European countries, including Germany, for example, other countries as well. And these countries have really supported the introduction of Wi-Fi as a license-exempt band, given the demand for the new generation of applications in internet that are being developed in terms of augmented and virtual reality. Now, India has been at the forefront of software technology and software development. India cannot afford to miss out on having these augmented and virtual reality applications, which are very much bandwidth hungry. And therefore, they require the capacity in terms of the bandwidth, in terms of channelization plans, to have the bandwidth available for these bandwidth hungry applications. Video and augmented and virtual reality are very heavy in terms of their bandwidth requirement. And therefore, the 1200 megahertz, which the Wi-Fi industry requires, is quite important, given the fact that the lower 6 gigahertz, 5925 to 6425, 60 countries around the world have already basically identified that band, and so on. And out of those 60, another 20 countries have also identified the 1200 megahertz, including the upper 700 megahertz in the 6 gigahertz band, the upper 6 gigahertz band, the 700 megahertz there. So in total, you have 1200 available, which allows you to do channelization plans. Handset device manufacturers for smartphones basically are more keen on having Wi-Fi built in a chip, with a chip, which allows the battery life of your handsets to be much more longer, as against having basically using the phone for mobile kind of connectivity, because it drains the battery because of the protocols involved between the base station and the handsets. So there are a lot of technical reasons, There are requirements from the software industry side as well as from the Wi-Fi sector. And basically, most of us who are sitting in the room there, 90% of us use Wi-Fi connectivity. How often do you actually use mobile? Now, the question of wireline was mentioned by Koa. And clearly, India has not, there is fiber connectivity in urban areas. There's fixed point-to-point, point-to-multipoint. There are backhaul services that are available through satellites. So there are multiple kind of access technologies that are available to support Wi-Fi sector. And that is happening. In a small country such as UK, we have 2.5 million hotspots available. Today, I have a subscription from an operator from home. And at the moment I leave my home, I'm actually connected to the BT Wi-Fi network. At the stations, at the airport, at hotels, or shopping malls, wherever I happen to be. India should be having 10 million hotspots, community-based hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots. And the connectivity for those will be found. There are various different access technologies. I don't actually pay anything extra beyond my home subscription to go out and use Wi-Fi all over UK.
Bashirji, we have understood your point.
The point I'm making here, thank you, Chairman. The point I'm making here, and just to finish off, is really, there are no limitations here. I mean, we have to bear in mind that we have 1.3 billion people which needs to be served in India. The mobile technology has been around. I was one of the first to be involved in the technical committee developing 2G network in early 1980s in Europe as part of CPT. Now, what I'm saying is we've had this technology. We haven't penetrated the masses in rural communities, okay? And basically, it's time that the Wi-Fi technology can be affordable, can be deliverable, can be accessible through various access technologies, and Wi-Fi can be made to happen in India. We need to have 10 million plus hotspots, community-based hotspots, where affordability will be very cheap, and the backhauling can be done through satellites. So, I think we need to look at different ways of doing this, different economics, different models, than just simply arguing on the basis that IMT is going to solve the problem. It is not. We've been there 30 years now with IMT, and it hasn't solved the problem, and it will never solve the problem of India in terms of connectivity. So let's be very realistic, let's be very pragmatic, and start moving in the right direction for the benefit of all the citizens in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Bashirji. We have understood your point that all the projection of spectrum requirement need to be verified on what criteria they have projected. We will keep that in mind. And I think so with this we are coming end of this session. So we may not be taking questions from audience because we are running short of time. So we are closing the meeting. So meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. After that highly interactive session, it's time to give away the mementos. I request Mr. M.P.S. Rawat to kindly give the mementos to the panelists. Shri Sachin Kumar, Shri Avinash Agarwal. Thank you so much, Sachin, for coming here. Shri Avinash Agarwal. Mr. Vikram Tewatia. Dr. Puneet Rathore. Ms. Nada Abdel Hafiz. And Mr. Shiro Fukumoto. Now I may request Mr. Bhatia to kindly give the memento to Mr. Lava. And the entire panel deserves a big round of applause for holding that interactive session. A group photograph says it all. I know it's lunchtime and we really want, but a short session before the lunchtime, because see, Radhika is smiling and she's been waiting. So nevertheless, we'll be having very short and crisp session before we end up having our lunch. So for the same, let's begin with the third, probably the second session of the day. For the same, I would like to call upon the session chair and moderator, Shri Bhagirath, Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor, WPC Wing, DOT. He attended 6 international conferences on spectrum management and spectrum monitoring at ITU headquarters at Geneva, 1 each at Hanoi, Da Nang, Vietnam, and Bali, Indonesia. He participated in proceedings of ISRO Divas matter at the International Court, The Hague at Netherlands, at Paris Court on behalf of Union of India as Indian Spectrum Regulation Expert. Shri Bhagirath is presently working as Senior Deputy Wireless Advisor in WPC Wing at Sanchar Bhavan, New Delhi, and assigned with responsibility of IMT WPC issue. Dr. Sendil Kumar Devar, thank you so much for coming again. Shri Abdul Qayyum, he is an Indian Telecommunications Service Officer, recently joined as DDG in JNK, LSA Jammu. He has vast experience of more than 28 years in telecom sector, and he was heading the 6G Technology Division in telecom sector. We also have Ms. K. Radhika with us, who is presently working as Assistant Violence Advisor, IT and SACFA in the WPC Wing and DOT. Earlier, she worked in WPC and WTO for almost 12 years. She was instrumental in implementing the various reforms adopted by WPC Wing with simplifying the SACFA procedure. So the stage is all yours, all the very best. I give it to the moderator and the chair, Mr. Bhagirath.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. We are very pleased to chair this last session of crucial agenda items set for WRC-23, and we hope we will conclude this session with 5G speed. So this includes 2 agenda items, this 9.1c and 21.5. These are relating to the rollout of 5G services and very important, and because multiple technologies are coming, so multiple antenna systems and deployments, it will be discussed. And the other agenda items, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 1.10 and 1.11 are relating to maritime and aeronautical services, and coexistence of satellite based voice and the data links with the terrestrial as well as the maritime and the other adjacent band services will be discussed. So without much discussion before, I would like to invite Dr. Sendil Kumar first. He is the Director Standards and Spectrum Erection, to give presentation on Article 21.5 and 9.1c. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I know there's a target of 30 minutes, 3 people speaking, so less than 10 minutes is what I have. So I started adding the content in the title slide itself so that I can say the number of slides is less. So this RR 21.5 and 9.1.c, these are 2 topics that I would want to cover. The second one is much simpler because the output is already decided, concluded. The RR 21.5 is a spin out of the activity that came out of WRC-19. The photo that you see on the title slide is actually that created this RR 21.5 discussions in 5D. This is coming out of the Agenda 1.13 from WRC-19 about the sharing studies between the 26 gigahertz band and what interference it causes to the satellite receivers. And that's exactly is the mask EIRP limit that was being discussed by Russian delegation during WRC. So this has led to two items which the working party 5D handled. One is the IMT stations, basically when they transmit, they create beams towards the users. What amount of interference can these beams leak into a satellite receivers on the uplink? And then the existing RR talks about just antennas. And then the discussion was about what if it is active antenna systems? How do you define that power limit? What is that power meant? So the focus is about saying whether that limit specified is still okay if it is an active antenna and then will still be protecting satellite or not. So it's about to look into those aspects. And the second activity that started in the working party 5D is to create a report on IMT active antenna systems, whether the models that was used in M2101 are the practical systems being developed in millimeter wave products. They also align or they fall within the same mask of an specified in the model in 2101. So there are, the idea is when the IMT stations are notified to the PR, how do we notify it, whether the notification is enough to figure out whether it will still protect the satellite receiver on the uplink side or not. Then right now, if you look at the RR, what does it say is, according to the provision 21.5, all the the power delivered by a transmitter to the antenna of a station from a fixed or mobile services will not exceed 13 dBW for below 1 to 10. But then above 10 gigahertz, it just says 10 dBW. The question was, is it, there are more than one transmitters in the active antenna systems. How do we understand that how do we capture that when it is being notified? Then there are a lot of discussions happening within 5D saying, does the action given to working party 5D talks about, in general, do we have to talk for all the bands? Or is the concern about how to read 21.5 with the context of protecting the satellite receivers? Luckily, we have some preliminary view coming from the previous APG meeting. The preliminary view says, one, there was no study completed within the working party 5D before the last meeting in Busan. So the idea or the common view from APT members was that we need to have a practical approach which says there is a balanced way of using this band both by satellite and IMT industry. That's a very fair statement. But then the last statement that you see from a preliminary view is the APT members believe there is no need to change the RR 21.5. That's an underlying pack, says we don't have to change anything. But then there are other views which says that are there any way how do we refer that assignments or notification when we submit to PR? And when we notify, what do we notify it? That's a discussion that was going on since last 3 to 4 years in working party 5D. I believe some of our Indian delegations when we were presenting, we continue to develop report, we could not conclude. The final thing that came out is there are 3 approaches to address that document 550 from the WRC, but then there was no single agreement. For every approach there were counter views. So final outcome of the previous 5D meeting from June that says that we could not agree on any of these approaches. Any administration who have views, I think it will be just statements which will be attached to the report. So we don't have any specific outcome of that action given to working party 5D. This is a table which again the agreement was whether we need to change anything in this table. There is no agreement to even change anything in the table as of now. The last one is very simple. The agenda was about, can we use an IMT technology under fixed services to deliver fixed wireless access? And it was found that yes, if we can turn off all the mobility features in an IMT technology, you can use it to deliver fixed services and fixed broadband access through those IMT technology. So the decision or outcome of the study cycle was that no changes are needed in the RR, and we can suppress the resolution 175 from WRC. I think it's very sweet and simple outcome and very concrete outcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Sandil. Once the situation will arise, certainly consensus will develop, maybe after some time. As on date, it's not required, so factual statements may go. So now I invite Sri Abdul Qayyum Saab, DDG Compliance, J&K LSA DOT, to share his views.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Thank you, Bhatia-ji, for inviting me. Before I share my thoughts, I have seen something missing. Most of us come here to learn the experts' opinion. What I find here, that IMT, the experts in favor of IMT seems to be the raiders. They need a lot of spectrum. And we have also seen that satellite industry is vehemently opposing to some of the demand of IMT. But why I find there are other users, and their demands are not actually visible on the platform. So for making a consensus view, I would request IFI to bring the people from, for example, meteorological organizations and other fixed service providers, so that we can actually learn what are the development in those areas and their demands. So I would like to share one experience why India should be technologically agnostic. We have some advantage that we are a big country and we have a very large coastal area. So we may not face the same problem which the small European countries may face. So, but the problem with us is that we do not conduct our own studies, and we get influenced by the different ideas just by listening or reading the text. So first, my request would be that that we should actually focus on national studies, so that we can make national consensus. Building, national consensus is more important. That gives us a footing to pursue, the other regions, other countries. For example, I'll quote the, just recently concluded W5D meeting. We had extensive discussion for the meeting, and we agreed for some proposals, and now we see the result that 3 important contributions from India were accepted at ITU-APT. So in respect of spectrum also, we need more studies, better consensus at national level, considering all the stakeholders. I was asked by Ministry of Home Affairs to visit 35 numbers of border villages, and I saw their peculiar situation. Each of the village has metal road, each of the village had electricity. And when I visited there, people are not knowing that I have come from a telecom department side. So when we were discussing the effectiveness of different government schemes, the only concern which we noticed there, that people need telecommunication services. That was the the most demanding thing. See, we discussed all the government scheme, whether you have this. So they said yes, and they are satisfied with the government scheme. But whereas in the as far as ICT services are concerned, they were not adequately addressed. Whereas most of the places, USF has provided some support in terms of deploying IMT services, some support for deploying VSAT services. What we found that a typical topography exists. If you put one tower in a village, it will cover, for example, the middle part of the village, and that upper and lower part of the village is not covered. So, and you know how much you spend on installing one tower, and whereas it covers a very small geographical region. The population size typically lay village around 200 to 300. So how many towers you are going to install there? And you know, since they are quite in remote area, so in many places you don't have optical fiber connectivity. So the backhauling is done through the satellite. And at some places only satellite services are there, and the connectivity to the end user is provided through Wi-Fi. So what we found that there is a need for IMT, there is need for satellite, and there is need for Wi-Fi. So our approach of solving the problem is that we should not be really very much obsessed with a particular technology. We should think that India is a very large country. We need a large coverage. We need affordable communication. So whoever can provide affordable communication, whether it is through IMT, whether it is through Wi-Fi or through satellite, that should be actually the focus of our concern. Now, since I was part of 6G a few months back, and India has got its contributions approved in the vision document, ITU-APT vision document. So that is the ubiquitous connectivity, coverage, and interoperability. And in the 6G, sustainability is one of the pillars. So, and when you think that additional services are also added, that is positioning, that is sensing. So that means when you are specifying so many capability, you need to have different approaches to the spectrum, because if you want that the spectrum should have sensing capability, you have to see which are the bands which will be capable of giving this value, and in which band you will have a better positioning. So our approach should be actually based on actual studies, rather than just having a protectionist attitude that we want this and others will so we cannot agree to this. So so I was just going through a meteorological service, World Meteorological Organization, what they say, that we can agree provisionally to some of the demands or requirements of different services. So can we have similar approach, that instead of opposing some recommendation, we collaborate with that, get actual testing done, and then when it is actually giving the good results or it is not disturbing the existing services, then we conclude for the finality. So I will just close my talk with one saying. The Mahatma Gandhi said that we have enough for our needs but not for the greeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri Abdul sir. Nicely pointed out the issues. And in the last few years, we have seen the government has also come up with the many open statements to enable the experiments. Regulatory sandbox also coming very soon, maybe. And the 6G vision documents also, the addresses. And everyone can contribute, can participate in the studies. And ITU-APT Foundation is also very open to discuss all the issues, and this is like a warm-up camp before the Olympic Games, like that. So it's good, and industry and the government also, they are open to discuss the issues. So we are in a good direction, I hope. Our next speaker is Madam Radhika on the aeronautical and maritime agenda items. These are also very important for the safety of life and all. So, please, madam.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm standing between you and your lunch. I'll keep it very brief. And these topics, while not being discussed too much, because the entire industry and ecosystem is focused on satellite and IMT issues, and these, because they have a safety of life aspect, it is mostly restricted to administration taking a decision. So this, this is a suborbital flight where the flight originates from the airspace and then it reaches a little of the space and then comes back to the Earth's surface. So a portion of the flight is in the terrestrial and a little portion in the space. Agenda item 1.6 considers making regulatory provisions for these suborbital flights. So these vehicles are intended to perform various missions such as deploying satellites, conducting scientific research, and also carrying passengers and cargo. As an example, if you're traveling in such a flight, you can reach from Europe to Australia in 90 minutes as opposed to the 24 hours that it takes. So you can imagine your time to Brisbane. Several companies are also trying to provide commercially viable solutions so that they can take people up, and then for the portion of the flight which is in space, you can experience weightlessness. So it's like being an astronaut for a short time. And from these flights, you can also see the curvature of the Earth. So you can experience several sunrise or several sunsets during a single flight period. The key issues here are whether to define it as a terrestrial service or a space service, because different regulatory procedures are required based on how you define the suborbital vehicles. And then there is no clear demarcation between the Earth's atmosphere and space. So where does the atmosphere end and where is space starting? And also between a sovereign nation's airspace and space, the outer space. So there's no demarcation between them either. And these aircrafts, when they are taking off from the ground, they need to be safely integrated with the existing aircrafts. So there should not be any disruption during the takeoff or the landing. And you cannot categorize them as a conventional aircraft because they are reaching higher altitudes and higher velocities. And their characteristics are not exactly like an aircraft. Also, the way the onboard systems work will be very different. So these are the methods proposed. One is no change to the radio regulations. Method B, they are different approaches. However, during the CPM, there was no common, there's a lot of difficulties and inconsistencies and no common method agreed upon. Then method C, it provides that the resolution should clarify the list of possible interference scenarios, and it should also complete the compatibility studies which are still ongoing. So as of now, I think we all also should just watch, because there's no clear direction on this agenda item. Coming to the next topic, we have in oceanic regions and all, so the VHF communications do not work. So they rely on high free HF or conventional satellite links. So this agenda item 1.7 proposes that a new aeronautical mobile satellite service allocation should be there in 117.975 to 137 megahertz. So in this, the satellite-based voice and data link services should be integrated into the existing ground infrastructure without any modification, and they should also be able to coexist with the terrestrial aeronautical services. The main benefits which we get out of this is that the same operational procedures will be utilized. The same aircraft equipment will be utilized both for VHF and the satellite, and there's no need for additional training for ATC and no additional avionics required in the aircraft. Also, because this will provide reliable communication over the seas, so you can change the routes of the aircrafts to have more efficient route and lower the carbon emission. There are different methods, and one is NOC and the other method is to add a new allocation. So in method B also there are several alternatives where either the frequency or the application of coordination procedures differ. This is an interesting topic where an unmanned aircraft is controlled with communication links through a FSS space station. So unmanned aircrafts are piloted remotely, and they have different, the control and non-payload communications include telecommand, which is in the forward direction, and then the telemetry data which comes back from the aircraft. There is a sense and avoid data, which the aircraft should be able to avoid any obstacles or other aircrafts. So here in this diagram you can see that links 1 and 4 are from the control station to the satellite. So they are like regular FSS operation, whereas links 2 and 3 are from the unmanned aircraft to the FSS space station, and these need additional consideration. So the key considerations are, because these are related to safety of life and FSS links are prone to interference, so we cannot ensure an interference-free operation as of now. Moreover, the administration which is coordinating the satellite has limited information, and the satellite operator has some other information. So there should be a clear-cut, as in there's no complete information with anyone to provide the interference-free operation or to see the technical performance of the links. And in this resolution, no additional status is to be granted to these links, and it should not have any adverse effect for the existing FSS coordination or in future networks. There should not be any impact on the terrestrial services. So in method A, they want to suppress this resolution altogether because of the contradictory nature of the FSS links and this the safety of life aspect of the UA. And FSS bands are already heavily congested, and interference is a regular occurrence. And even after this has been carrying forward from the past 2 WRC, so even after 2 cycles, there is not clear data available to take a decision. And in method B, it has several alternatives where they want to say that there should be a clear responsibility of ICAO, there should be a clear responsibility of the ITU, of the member states, and how the procedure for coordination of the FSS networks, and how to process cases of interference. So these methods vary slightly in what they want. Next we move on to how aircrafts are using HF for their communication, and agenda item 1.9 wants to review appendix 27 so that even digital technologies can be accommodated. This agenda item is being supported by everyone because everyone's of the view that the technology has changed and appendix 27 hasn't been revised since a very long time, and this has to be taken up. So method A is no change, and method B is inclusion into RR, explicit recognition for wideband digital communication. So when we are using this, then the operational capacity which is limited will increase, and this will open the possibility for simultaneous transmission of voice and data, which will in turn improve the capacity and connectivity and the quality of the HF communication. They will also provide the aircraft with additional capabilities and improve the reliability. In agenda item 1.10, we are looking at allocation for aeronautical mobile off-route service. These are not related to safety of life, but these days aircrafts are fitted with some sensors and they collect data such as environment monitoring, video surveillance, terrain mapping, and air quality. So while these are not safety of life operations, this data which they are collecting might still have, might still be important. So the number of aircrafts equipped with such sensors, especially for surveillance, is increasing. So this agenda item looks at two bands, 15.4 to 15.7, where they want to add a new primary allocation, and 22 to 22.21, where the except aero mobile may be removed. So these are the bands, and there are studies going on for compatibility with in-band services and adjacent band also. So the methods propose either no change, or only in 15.4 to 15.7, or only in 22 to 22.21, or both the bands with guard bands. However, as of now, we are of the opinion that because of already the bands are congested and there are a lot of uses, we may wait and watch and go with no change probably, so that the band remains open for other applications. Maritime communication is also very important. So in agenda item 1.11, we are looking at how to further improve maritime communication. So IMO sets the global standards, and GMDSS, which is the Maritime Distress and Safety System, defines the requirements of the ships. So according to IMO, there are different sea areas defined, like sea area 1, 2, 3, 4, where different kind of communication equipment need to be there on the ships on board. So in this there are three issues. One is the modernization of GMDSS, where they want to do away with obsolete thing like deletion of narrowband direct printing, which is not being used, introduction of a new automatic connection system in all MF and HF bands, and implementation of an automatic identification system, search and rescue transmitter as a locating equipment. And in e-navigation, this also is to say that the exchange of information will be done digitally, and this does not have any implication on the radio regulation. So there is just one method, and it is supported by all the countries. This is introduction of additional satellite system into the GMDSS. Presently, GMDSS system has Immersat and Iridium. While the DG Shipping recognizes Immersat in India, even Iridium is still not recognized. There's a satellite recognized by IMO called Baidu from China, which is providing GMDSS satellite. But however, the coordination is not yet complete. So the methods proposed also, there has been a lot of discussions whether the coordination status is important for ITU, or ITU should operate separately and not bother about the coordination status. And there are several interferences being reported, so that also needs to be taken care. So this agenda item also, we are following the discussions closely and take a decision depending on that. And mostly these decisions lie with what DG Shipping wants. Once IMO recognizes something and DG Shipping also is in the same line, these are not much of frequency considerations, because the satellite has already been coordinated. So that is a brief of the issues, and this is only to provide a flavor of what WRC deals with other than satellite and IMT issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Radhika. Hope regional consensus will be developed, because there is not much economic interest in these agenda items, barring one or two. And in the morning, Mr. Parvez told that after that all will be equally unhappy, but in these agenda items, perhaps all will be equally happy. So, and because we are short of the time, even then, if any question, please. Okay.
So definition of RR is in the appendix 27. Is there any other appendix we need to look into when we are talking about RR? That is question number one. Second question is, when we talk about fixed specific locations, how our CDNs are being deployed right now, because there's a lot of cyber hacking happening. So how simulations would be taken into considerations? Like when you say use case study is equal to simulation, so is there any case study on that, or that is out of the purview of discussion?
Sorry, I could not get the question clearly. Probably I'm very hungry.
Okay,
maybe
I'm hungry for data right now.
So, if it is specific to
my definition of RR, like definition of RR has been talked about appendix 27. Is there any other documentation I need to look into when we talk about RR?
Maybe over lunch we can catch up. Thank you.
If it's okay, we can discuss this outside at the lunch. All right, so thank you very much for actually keeping it short and sweet. It's time for the lunch. And before that, I would like to call upon Mr. Bhatia to kindly give the concluding remarks. And Mr. Bhatia, please.
I'm sorry we had to cut short, because I think we are quite late for lunch and people have been here since morning. But I must thank Mr. Bhagirath and this panel here. They've really done a good job in a very short time, at least bringing out the important issues. So for last 2 days we have had extensive discussion over all the agenda items. I won't take any time. I just want to thank everybody. Just want to make sure that we have practically covered all the agenda items, and based on the discussions that we have had, we will prepare our recommendation and submit it to the ministry, and of course take up also during the Brisbane meeting. So with that, perhaps we can conclude this conference, and perhaps we have some mementos to give. So please carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's time to give away the mementos. So I request Mr. Bhagirath to kindly give the mementos to Shri Abdul Qayyum. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul, for coming here. And to Ms. Radhika as well. May I request Mr. Bhatia to kindly give the memento to the session chair, Mr. Bhagirath. And we can have a group photo of the session. So with this, we come to another successful day 2 of the workshop. I request all the speakers, the delegates, the all our friends who are present here in the hall, the organizers and the staff who has made this event so successful, kindly please come for a big group photograph and addition to the memory lane. Thank you so much, and the lunch is all set.